The gunshot shattered the gallery's cathedral silence before I even saw the weapon. I dropped behind a marble pedestal, my champagne flute exploding against Italian tile. Screams erupted around me, designer gowns and tailored suits scattering like startled birds. My heart hammered against my ribs as I pressed myself flat, the cold stone biting through my dress. Another shot. Closer. I'd been admiring a Kandinsky reproduction 30 seconds ago, wondering if the art dealer's commission would finally cover my student loans. Now I was calculating exit routes and praying my heels wouldn't betray me if I had to run. The command cut through the chaos. Low, precise, dangerous. Russian. I knew enough to understand. Stay where you are. I peered around the pedestal's edge. The man stood in the gallery's center like a dark monument, utterly still while panic swirled around him. Tall, black suit that probably cost more than my car. His face was all hard angles in winter, sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, eyes so pale they looked silver in the gallery lights. 3 men flanked him, guns drawn, moving with synchronized precision that spoke of military training. Blood pooled near the entrance, a body I refused to look at directly. The silver-eyed man surveyed the room with the bored patience of someone accustomed to violence. His gaze swept past my hiding spot, then returned. Stopped. I froze. He said something in rapid Russian to the man beside him, a comment that made the bodyguard's mouth twitch. I caught enough words to understand. He'd called me a frightened mouse. Something about Americans and their delicate constitutions. Rage flared hotter than fear. I stood up. Every rational cell in my body screamed at me to stay down, stay quiet, stay invisible. But I'd spent 2 years learning Russian for my art history thesis on the Soviet avant-garde, and I'd be damned if this criminal in expensive wool would mock me in a language he assumed I didn't understand. "Yana mush," I said clearly. "I'm not a mouse. And if your men are so well trained, why did they let someone bring a gun in here?" Silence crashed over the gallery. The silver-eyed man's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air, a tightening, like a wire drawn taut. His bodyguards exchanged glances. One of them, younger, with a scar bisecting his eyebrow, made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. The man in charge took 3 steps toward me. Just 3. But they closed the distance like he'd crossed the entire room. His voice was silk over steel. "You speak Russian." I lifted my chin, refusing to let my voice shake. My hands trembled against my sides, but I kept my gaze steady on his face. His head tilted fractionally, studying me. Those pale eyes tracked across my face like he was memorizing every feature, every tell. I felt stripped bare under that gaze, exposed in ways that had nothing to do with the thin silk of my dress. "Dmitri," he said softly, not looking away from me. "Dmitri, did you think she wouldn't understand?" The scarred bodyguard cleared his throat. "No, sir. And now she's made you look foolish." A muscle in Dmitri's jaw twitched, but I could see the corner of his mouth fighting a smile. The silver-eyed man moved closer. I should have stepped back. Every instinct screamed at me to maintain distance from this clearly dangerous person. But I stood my ground, even as my pulse thundered so loud I was certain he could hear it. He asked in English now, his accent turning the words into something dark and decadent. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or the ghost of amusement. It vanished before I could be sure. He stopped less than 3 feet away, close enough that I caught his scent, expensive cologne, gunpowder, something darker beneath. "Maybe both," I said. Behind us, sirens wailed in the distance. His men moved with sudden purpose, herding the remaining gallery patrons toward exits, speaking in low, urgent Russian. But the man in front of me didn't move. He simply watched me with those unnerving eyes, like I was a puzzle he needed to solve. "You should leave," he said finally. He reached into his jacket. I tensed and pulled out a business card, held it between two fingers. But you impressed my men. I didn't take the card. He tucked the card into my clutch purse before I could stop him, his fingers brushing mine for one electric second. Little mouse. He walked away before I could respond, his men forming a protective wedge as they disappeared through a service exit. The sirens grew louder. I stood there shaking, my heart racing, the weight of his card burning through leather and silk against my hip. I should have thrown it away. I didn't. The police kept me for 3 hours. I sat in a folding chair that squeaked every time I shifted, giving my statement to a detective who looked like he hadn't slept in days. Yes, I'd been admiring the artwork. No, I didn't know anyone at the gallery personally. Yes, I heard gunshots. No, I didn't see the shooter's face. I didn't mention the silver-eyed man or his perfectly synchronized guards. I didn't mention speaking Russian or the business card currently burning a hole in my purse. The detective's eyes were tired but sharp. Graduate student, NYU. Past tense now. The gallery owner was dead. I'd seen the sheet-covered body as they wheeled it out. I wasn't calm. My hands still trembled when I thought no one was looking. But I'd learned early that showing fear invited more questions, more scrutiny, more problems. Shock, probably, I said. He studied me for another long moment, then slid his card across the table. I took it with numb fingers. 2 business cards in one night. Some kind of record. The subway ride home felt surreal. Normal people doing normal things. Scrolling phones, reading, sleeping against windows. Like the world hadn't just tilted sideways. Like I hadn't watched a man die and then traded barbs with someone who probably ordered the killing. My studio apartment in Bushwick welcomed me with its familiar smell of old radiator heat and the neighbors cooking. I locked the door, threw the deadbolt, and leaned against the wood until my breathing steadied. Then I pulled out the card. Heavy stock. Expensive. No company name, no title. Just a phone number embossed in silver ink, and below it, a single word in Cyrillic. Volk. Wolf. I should have burned it. Thrown it down the trash chute. Done literally anything except what I did, which was stare at it for 20 minutes while my kettle boiled dry on the stove. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those pale silver eyes tracking across my face. Heard that dark voice wrapping around Russian consonants like a threat and a promise. Felt the ghost of his fingers brushing mine. At 4 a.m., I gave up and made coffee, opened my laptop, started searching. Russian Mafia, New York. Brighton Beach crime families. Art gallery murders, Manhattan. The news articles were sparse, carefully worded. The shooter remained unidentified. Police were investigating. Nothing about silver-eyed men or wolves. I dug deeper, found forum posts, Reddit threads, carefully vague Twitter rumors. The Russian Bratva operated differently than the Italian families. Quieter, more insular. They controlled Brighton Beach, parts of Brooklyn, had fingers in art smuggling, money laundering, construction. One name kept appearing in hushed whispers. Alexei Volkov. No photos, no confirmed details. Just a shadow in the shape of a man. The Wolf of Brighton Beach. Ruthless. Untouchable. Rumored to have taken control of the Volkov family at 23 after his father's assassination. I stared at my screen until the words blurred. The card sat beside my keyboard. Mocking me. 3 days passed. I called in sick to my other job at the museum, stayed in my apartment, jumped at every footstep in the hallway. The police detective called twice. I let it go to voicemail. On the 4th day, my bank account screamed at me to get back to work. Rent didn't care about trauma. I was walking to the subway when I felt it. That creeping sensation of being watched. I'd felt it on and off since the gallery, but now it intensified, made my shoulder blades itch. I stopped at a bodega, pretending to examine plantains while checking the reflection in the window. A man in a gray jacket, 30 feet back. He'd been behind me for 3 blocks. My mouth went dry. I bought gum I didn't want and left through the back exit past the storage room. Came out on a different street. Walked 2 blocks, turned randomly, doubled back. Gray jacket was gone. But at the subway entrance, I spotted him again. Different position, same patient expression. They were following me. Had been, probably since the gallery. I made it to the platform before my hands started shaking. The train arrived. I got on, got off at the last second. Gray jacket didn't follow. But another man in a black coat did, casual as breathing. I rode to the end of the line and back. Changed trains 3 times. Lost black coat somewhere around Union Square. When I finally made it to my apartment, I found a package outside my door. No return address, just my name in precise handwriting. Inside, a phone. New, expensive, a single number programmed in, and a note in Russian. Oni ne moi. Vu. They're not mine. Call me. V. I held the phone like it might explode. He knew where I lived, knew I was being followed, knew I'd understand the message. The business card sat on my counter where I'd left it that first night. The new phone screen glowed in the darkness of my apartment. I should have gone to the police, should have packed a bag and disappeared, should have done anything except what my trembling fingers were doing, opening the new phone, finding the programmed number. One text, that's all. Just to understand what the hell was happening. My thumbs hovered over the screen. In the window's reflection, I could see my own face. Pale, frightened, stubborn. The same face that had stood up in a gallery full of gunfire and insulted a mafia boss in his own language. Courage or stupidity. He still hadn't decided. Neither had I. I typed, "Who's following me?" The response came in seconds. People who want to know why Volkov is interested in an art student. Come to this address tomorrow, 8 p.m., alone. Or keep running and see how long you last. Below the message, a Brighton Beach address. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. The wolves were circling, and somehow, impossibly, I'd already stepped into their territory. Brighton Beach looked different at night. The elevated subway rattled overhead as I walked down streets that smelled like the ocean and something older. Salt, fish, secrets. Cyrillic signs glowed in windows. Russian voices drifted from restaurants and shops still open despite the hour. I'd been here before for research, daylight visits to interview émigrés about Soviet art. This felt nothing like those trips. The address led me to a restaurant called Troika. Elegant, understated. The kind of place where people paid in cash and didn't ask questions. 2 men in dark suits flanked the entrance. One of them, Dmitri, the scarred bodyguard from the gallery, nodded when he saw me. "She came," he said in Russian to his companion. Something in his tone suggested he'd bet against it. I stopped 3 feet away, trying to look braver than I felt. "Inside, 3rd floor." Dmitri's eyes weren't unkind. "Security measure." I hesitated. Every self-preservation instinct screamed at me to turn around, get back on the train, disappear. But whoever was following me wouldn't stop just because I ignored them. And something about that text message, "See how long you last," felt less like a threat and more like a warning. I handed over my belongings. Dmitri gave me a thorough pat-down, professional, impersonal, then opened the door. 3rd floor. The restaurant hummed with low conversation and violin music, expensive suits, beautiful women, the clink of crystal and silver. Everyone looked dangerous and bored in equal measure. No one looked at me, but I felt their attention like heat on my skin. A woman with ice blonde hair and a dress that cost more than my semester's tuition appeared beside me. We climbed a staircase lined with paintings, originals, not reproductions. I recognized a small Chagall, a Kandinsky study, hundreds of thousands of dollars on these walls, hanging like they were nothing. The second floor held private dining rooms. Voices leaked through heavy doors. Russian, English, languages I didn't recognize. The blonde kept climbing. The third floor was silent. A single door. Dark wood. No nameplate. The blonde knocked twice. Paused. Knocked once more. Vojdite, came the reply. She opened the door and gestured me inside. Then she was gone, her heels clicking back down the stairs. I stepped into the wolf's den. The room was smaller than I expected. More office than dining room. A massive desk, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a leather sofa near a window overlooking the street. Soft lighting that made everything feel intimate and dangerous at once. Alexei Volkov stood by the window, his back to me. Even motionless, he commanded the space. The same perfectly tailored suit. The same dangerous stillness. He was looking out at Brighton Beach like a king surveying his kingdom. "You came alone," he said without turning. My voice came out steadier than my pulse. I did, hearing the lock click with a finality that made my stomach drop. He turned then, and the full weight of his attention hit me like a physical force. Those silver eyes tracked across my face the same way they had in the gallery, cataloging, measuring, deciding. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the leather sofa. A ghost of amusement crossed his face. Still brave. He moved to the desk, poured 2 glasses of something amber from a crystal decanter. Brought one to me. I didn't take it. "Vincent Castellano was stealing from me," Alexei said, his English precise and unaccented except for the slight roll of his R's. "Art pieces, expensive ones." He took a sip from his own glass. "Someone else did." I processed this. "You were seen talking to me, speaking Russian." He set his glass down. "In my world, that makes you interesting." The room felt smaller suddenly, warmer. He stepped closer, not threatening exactly, but deliberate, each movement calculated. "But you're in it now. The Kozlov family thinks you might be useful, either as leverage or information." "My competitors, they deal in similar markets." I laughed, sharp, borderline hysterical. "And you're civilized? You had me followed. You know where I live." His voice dropped lower, quieter. "Dangerous. You had 3 options. Run, and they'd catch you within a week. Go to the police, and they'd kill you for talking." The word protection sounded different in his mouth. Not safe, not gentle, like a knife held to someone else's throat on my behalf. I should have been terrified. I was terrified. But underneath the fear was something else, something that had flickered to life in that gallery when he'd looked at me like I was a puzzle worth solving. I asked. He was close enough now that I could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the exact shade of gray in his eyes. "But you stood up in a room full of gunfire and insulted me in Russian. That takes either tremendous courage or a death wish. Either way." He paused. Something shifted in his expression. The violin music drifted up from below. Outside, Brighton Beach sprawled in all its neon glory. And I stood in a mobster's office, breathing the same air, caught in a web I didn't understand. I whispered. Alexei's smile was sharp as winter. "Trust me, Mishka." "Trust you," I repeated. "I—" "3/4," he corrected, returning to his desk. "And it's not about trust. It's about survival." He pressed a button on his phone. Dmitri appeared in the doorway within seconds, as if he'd been waiting just outside. "Show her," Alexei said in Russian. Dmitri pulled out a tablet, tapped the screen, and handed it to me. Photos, surveillance shots. Me leaving my apartment, walking to the subway, at the bodega, outside the museum where I worked, timestamps from the last 4 days, different angles, different watchers. My hands went numb. "These are the Kozlov family's people," Alexei said. "They're thorough, patient." I scrolled through the images, my stomach churning. There were at least 30 photos, 30 moments where I'd been watched, tracked, catalogued like prey. He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "This is my city, Mishka." I looked up from the tablet. He was watching me with that same unsettling focus, like he could see straight through skin and bone to whatever trembled underneath. Elena, I said finally. Something flickered across his face. Petrov. My grandfather. I set the tablet down before my shaking hands betrayed me. Alexei gestured to Dmitri, who disappeared again. But you're here anyway. That's terrified, I corrected. He studied me for a long moment. Most people in your situation would be crying, begging. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the room's warmth. You said you'd handle it. Alexei moved to the window again, hands in his pockets. The city lights cast shadows across his face, making him look carved from stone. Tomorrow night there's a meeting. Neutral territory. The 5 families discuss business, settle disputes. I'll make it known that you're under my protection. And they'll just... He turned back to me. Of course there was. The Kozlovs will want to know why. Why I'm protecting a random graduate student. His eyes locked onto mine. Understanding hit me like cold water. You want me to pretend to be... what? Your girlfriend? My interest, he said carefully. Nothing more specific. I stood up, backing toward the door. Absolutely not. My name and his accent stopped me. If you walk out that door, the Kozlovs will have you within 2 days. They'll use you to get information about me, my operations, my weaknesses. You don't even know me. He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, Vincent Castellano was killed because of my war with the Kozlovs. You were there by accident. The word tasted bitter. Not noble. He closed the distance between us in 3 strides. I don't let innocent people die in my conflicts. It's bad for business and worse for control. But more than that... He paused. Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the controlled facade. You're sharp, fearless in moments when you should be afraid. His voice dropped lower. People like that are rare. The air between us felt charged, dangerous. I could smell his cologne again. Cedar, gunpowder, winter. I heard myself ask, this? You'd be seen with me, public appearances. You'd stay at a secure location, not your apartment. Until the Kozlovs are dealt with. Weeks. A month. 4 weeks of living in the Russian Mafia's shadow, of pretending to be something I wasn't, of being close to this dangerous, magnetic man who looked at me like I was a problem he couldn't solve. I thought about my studio apartment with its broken radiator, the surveillance photos, the gray jacket and black coat following me through the subway, the fear that had lived in my chest for 4 days. I want protection for my family too, I said. My mother, my sister. Alexei nodded once. And I keep going to school, to work, accompanied by security. I want access to a lawyer, someone who's not yours, someone who can... I struggled for the words. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. If this goes wrong, a lawyer won't save you. No, he agreed. They're not. I pressed my palms against my thighs, trying to stop the shaking. Everything in me screamed this was insane, that I should run, hide, disappear. But the rational part, the part that had gotten me through undergrad on scholarships and survived New York on student loans, knew he was right. I was already in this. The only question was whether I survived it. Okay, I whispered. Alexei's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. Relief, maybe. Or satisfaction. He pulled out his phone. Dmitri will take you to the apartment. It's in Williamsburg, secure. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I felt it like a touch. The apartment was obscene, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the East River, marble countertops, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Everything white and chrome and expensive, the kind of place I'd only seen in magazines. Dmitri set my overnight bag, hastily packed under his watchful eye, on the pristine white sofa. Kitchen is fully stocked. Bedroom through there. Security system is armed. Volkov's people. He moved to the door, then paused. My voice sounded hollow in the cavernous space. He almost smiled. The Kozlovs wouldn't have been kind. Volkov is complicated. Then he was gone, and I was alone in a stranger's apartment with my entire life reduced to one duffel bag. I stood at the window and watched the city lights blur through sudden tears. This morning I'd been worried about my thesis defense. Now I was a mafia boss's fake interest, hiding in a luxury apartment while dangerous men decided whether I lived or died. My phone buzzed. The new one Alexei had sent. Get some sleep. Car picks you up at 9 a.m. for class. I typed back. How do you know my schedule? I know everything about you now, Elena. It's how I keep you safe. The words should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something else, a strange, unwanted flutter in my chest. I deleted the message and went to find the bedroom. Sleep came in fragments. Every sound made me jolt awake, the building settling, sirens in the distance, my own heartbeat too loud in the silence. At 3 a.m., I gave up and made tea in the kitchen that looked like it had never been used. Sat at the marble island and tried to grade papers on my laptop. Tried to pretend my life was normal. My phone lit up. Not Alexei this time. My sister, Natalie. Mom said you're not answering her calls. Everything okay? I stared at the screen. What could I possibly say? I'm fine. Just witnessed a murder, and now I'm under the protection of the Russian Mafia. I typed, everything's fine. Just busy with thesis stuff. Tell Mom I'll call this weekend. You sound weird. I'm tired. That's all. Elena. My sister knew me too well. We'd grown up sharing a bedroom, secrets, everything. She could read my lies through text messages. I promise I'm okay. Just stressed. Love you. She didn't respond. I could picture her frowning at her phone, debating whether to push. Finally, love you too, but I'm calling Mom if you don't check in by Sunday. I set the phone down and pressed my palms against my eyes. This was impossible. How was I supposed to maintain a normal life while playing pretend with a man who controlled half of Brooklyn's underworld? The tea had gone cold. The papers remained ungraded. Outside, the city prepared for dawn. The car arrived exactly at 9. Black SUV, tinted windows. Dmitri in the driver's seat and another guard, introduced as Pavel, riding shotgun. We'll walk you to class, wait outside, walk you back, Dmitri explained as we pulled into NYU's campus. Natural, I repeated. They did, but I felt their presence like a shadow as I walked into the Institute of Fine Arts, felt other students' curious glances, heard whispered questions I couldn't answer. My advisor, Professor Chen, cornered me after seminar. Elena. Her expression softened. That must have been traumatic. Too sharp. I softened my tone. I'm fine. The work helps, actually. She didn't look convinced, but nodded. I made it through 2 classes, a meeting with my thesis committee, 4 hours in the library. Dmitri and Pavel shadowed me through all of it, professional and silent. By the time we returned to the apartment, my nerves were shredded. Dmitri asked at the door. Same time, I confirmed. But when I stepped inside, I wasn't alone. Alexei stood by the windows, hands in his pockets, looking out at the river. He'd shed his suit jacket. White shirt rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms marked with scars and what looked like the edge of a tattoo. My voice came out breathless. He turned. I dropped my bag. Dinner is being delivered at 7. Because tomorrow night is the meeting. The Kozlovs will be watching every interaction between us. We need to be... He moved closer, and I forced myself not to step back. Something shifted in his expression. He was close enough now that I could see the flecks of darker gray in his eyes, could see the faint stubble along his jaw, could feel the heat radiating from his body. This is insane, I whispered. His voice had dropped to that low, dangerous register. I gave you 3. He lifted a hand slowly, telegraphing the movement, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers barely grazed my skin, but I felt it like electricity. My breath caught. Not a question. A certainty. He was right. God help me, he was right. Some twisted part of me was drawn to this, to him, to the danger and darkness and the way he looked at me like I mattered. The food will be here in an hour, he said, stepping back. We should talk, learn each other. I nodded, not trusting my voice. As he moved toward the kitchen, I caught sight of the tattoo on his forearm, Cyrillic letters in stark black ink. Volk, wolf. I was living in the wolf's den now, and despite everything, I wasn't sure I wanted to leave. Dinner arrived in black containers with gold trim. Georgian food, khachapuri bread boats filled with cheese and egg, khinkali dumplings, char-grilled vegetables that smelled like summer. Alexei set everything out on the dining table with surprising efficiency. No staff, no assistants. Just him moving through the space with the same controlled precision he brought to everything. I asked, hovering near the kitchen island. Sometimes. He poured wine, red, expensive, into 2 glasses. I sat. He took the chair across from me, close enough that our knees almost touched under the table. Tell me about your family, he said, breaking open the khachapuri. Steam rose between us. Your mother. Because the Kozlovs will ask. He met my eyes. I took a sip of wine. Let it warm my throat. My mother teaches elementary school in Princeton. She emigrated with my grandfather when she was 12. Natalie, 2 years younger. She's a nurse, married. I smiled despite everything. She's the practical one. Alexei served me dumplings with the easy familiarity of someone used to hosting. You're sharp, observant. He bit into a dumpling, chewed thoughtfully. You process information quickly. Adapt. I am afraid, I admitted. I'm just also angry. Something like approval flickered across his face. Fear keeps you alert. We ate in silence for a moment. The food was incredible, rich and complex. Outside, the city glittered. Your turn, I said. If I'm supposed to be your... His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I leaned forward. And don't say responsibility. He set down his fork, studied me with those unnerving silver eyes. My sister was 19 when she was killed, he said finally. Caught in the crossfire of someone else's war. She was an artist, painter. My chest tightened. Alexei. She spoke 3 languages. She had opinions about everything. His voice remained level, but something raw lived underneath. The confession hung between us like smoke. I'm sorry, I whispered. He picked up his wine glass, didn't drink. It was 15 years ago, different life. Part of it. After she died, my father spiraled, made enemies. His fingers tightened on the glass. Certainty. I couldn't. Too many people depending on me. He finally drank. So I made it mine, made it stronger. Anya, his sister's name. That's why you have rules, I said, understanding clicking into place. About innocent people. He set the glass down. Vincent Castellano broke those rules. He involved civilians, used his gallery as a front. His eyes found mine. His voice dropped lower. The air between us thickened. My pulse beat in my throat. Tell me about your thesis, he said, shifting topics before I could respond. I blinked at the change. Soviet avant-garde. Kandinsky, Malevich. A ghost of a smile. Before she married into the family. He gestured around the apartment. I looked at the walls, really looked. That wasn't just expensive art. It was curated, purposeful. A small Goncharova study near the window. What might have been a Popova sketch in the hallway. These are originals, I breathed. Some. He stood, moved to the Goncharova. I joined him at the window, studied the painting in the fading light, the brushwork, the aging of the canvas, the way the colors had settled over decades. Original, I said finally. 1910s, probably. He was standing close, too close. I could feel the heat of him. The Popova is fake. Because it's still art. He turned to face me. The words felt weighted, meaningful beyond their surface. I asked quietly. His hand lifted, hesitated. Then his fingers traced along my jaw, slow, deliberate. But the Kozlovs need to believe it's real. Which means tomorrow night, you'll stand beside me. Let me touch you. I should have pulled away. Should have reminded him this was business, survival, nothing more. His thumb brushed across my lower lip. Like this, he said. My breath caught. And then, he continued, his voice barely above a whisper, we make them see what they expect to see. Possessiveness. Protection. My voice shook. His eyes darkened. The dress arrived at noon. Black silk. Elegant but understated. Cut to hug every curve without being obvious about it. Expensive enough to signal status. Simple enough not to scream new money. A note in Alexei's handwriting. Wear this. Hair down. No jewelry except what I send. 20 minutes later, a velvet box appeared. Inside, a platinum necklace with a single diamond pendant. Not ostentatious, just enough to catch light, to draw eyes to my throat, to mark me as his. I stared at my reflection as I fastened the clasp. I looked like someone else, someone who belonged in this world of expensive restaurants and dangerous men. Someone who could stand beside Alexei Volkov and make people believe she wanted to be there. The lie was getting easier to wear. The car ride was silent. Alexei sat beside me in the back seat, close enough that our thighs touched. He wore all black, suit, shirt, everything. It made his eyes look silver white in the dim light, predatory. Remember, he said as we pulled up to the restaurant, stay close to me. Don't answer questions directly. Then you understand every word. His hand found mine, threaded our fingers together. This is important, Elena. The Kozlovs will test you. Try to find weakness. I nodded, my throat tight. His thumb traced circles on my palm, a gesture that might have been comforting if it didn't feel so possessive. He leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. Whatever happens in there, whatever you see or hear, you trust me. I closed my eyes. The praise shouldn't have affected me. It did. The restaurant was called Zolotoy, golden, private. The kind of place that didn't have a sign or a public phone number. 4 men waited in the back room. I recognized the type immediately. The same controlled violence as Alexei. The same expensive suits hiding dangerous bodies. But where Alexei felt like winter, these men felt like rot. Something diseased beneath the polish. The one at the head of the table spoke. Older, maybe 50, with sharp features and cold eyes. Alexei's hand settled at the small of my back. Possessive. Mikhail Kozlov. Mikhail's gaze slid to me, lingered. Mine, Alexei said simply. Elena. I met Mikhail's eyes and said nothing. Let my silence speak. Mikhail smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Beautiful. Alexei's voice dropped to permafrost. The tension in the room crystallized. The other 3 men shifted, subtle movements, hands near weapons. Then Mikhail laughed. Sit, Volkov. The meeting was in Russian, all of it. They discussed territory, shipments, money laundering routes through construction companies and art galleries. Vincent Castellano's name came up, his death an inconvenience, his connections now up for grabs. I understood every word, kept my face blank, sipped water when Alexei poured it for me, let his hand rest on my thigh under the table. The gallery is mine now, Alexei said. Castellano's debts, his contacts, his inventory. He owed us money too, one of the other men interjected. Younger, cruel mouth. You have nothing. He died on neutral ground during an unsanctioned hit. Mikhail leaned back. And this girl, she was there that night. My pulse spiked. Alexei's hand tightened on my leg. Warning, not comfort. Yes, Alexei said. She saw things. Could be useful. She's neither. His thumb traced a circle on my inner thigh. The gesture looked intimate, felt like a claim. Mikhail studied me with dead eyes. I looked at Alexei. He nodded once. Petrov? I said quietly. Mikhail exchanged glances with his men. Any relation to Dmitri Petrov? My blood went cold. My grandfather. My grandfather, I admitted. He went legitimate. Mikhail's smile was razor sharp. Interesting. So you have mob blood after all. Alexei stood, pulling me up with him. We're done here. The gallery is mine. My territory stands. Mikhail remained seated, relaxed. You're stretched thin. Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens. You can't protect everything. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Try me, Alexei said softly. He guided me toward the door. I felt Mikhail's eyes on my back like a target. In the hallway, Alexei's control finally cracked. He pressed me against the wall, his body shielding me from view, his hand cupping my face. Low. Urgent. No. My hands fisted in his shirt. He left that life behind. His forehead touched mine. It makes you vulnerable. It makes you… What? His voice cracked slightly. They can trace you now. Use your family against you. Alexei, I should have known. Self-recrimination. Anger at himself, not me. His hands framed my face. Because if something happens to you… He stopped, drew back, but not before I saw it. The crack in his armor, the fear beneath the control. Nothing will happen to me, I said, surprising myself with the certainty. He searched my face, then slowly, deliberately, he leaned in. The kiss was soft, questioning. Nothing like I'd expected from him. When he pulled back, his eyes were storm gray. That was practice, he said roughly, his jaw clenched. But the way he looked at me, the way his hands trembled slightly against my skin, suggested otherwise. We'd crossed a line tonight. In that room full of wolves, something had shifted. The fake was starting to feel dangerously real. The car was waiting when we exited, but Alexei didn't move toward it. Change of plans, he said to Dmitri. Take Pavel and circle back. The command left no room for argument. Dmitri's jaw tightened, but he nodded and drove off, leaving us on the street. Alone. I pulled my coat tighter against the October wind. He started down the sidewalk. Brighton Beach at midnight looked different, quieter. The restaurants had dimmed their lights, but the streets still hummed with life. Late-night diners, men smoking outside social clubs, women in furs stepping out of cars. Alexei's world. Every person we passed nodded to him, showed respect, fear. You knew, I said after 2 blocks. He kept his eyes forward. The background check showed Russian heritage, Brighton Beach connections, but the name didn't flag until Mikhail said it. Dmitri Petrov was small time. He paused at a corner, scanned the street with professional paranoia. Because they'll use it. His hand found the small of my back again. I thought about my grandfather, the quiet man who'd taught me Russian over Sunday dinners, who'd died when I was 15. He ran numbers, small bets, nothing violent. When my mother was born, he quit. Completely. He wanted better for my mother. I stopped walking. He would hate this. Alexei turned to face me. Streetlight cast shadows across his features. You're right. He would. His voice was rough, raw. A car turned onto our street. Alexei's hand went to his waistband, to a gun I hadn't seen. But the car passed. False alarm. You're paranoid, I said. He started walking again, faster now. We turned down a darker street, residential. The apartment buildings here were older, less maintained. This wasn't Alexei's territory. This was neutral ground. Dangerous ground. He pulled me into an alley between buildings, dark, private. My back hit brick. He stood close, shielding me with his body from the street view. He asked quietly, "I mean, what did you see about the Kozlovs, their dynamics?" I thought back. Mikhail at the head of the table, the younger man who'd spoken, eager, trying to prove himself. The other two, silent but watching everything. "Mikhail's in charge, but the young one wants to be," I said slowly. "He challenged you. Tried to." "Andrei." Alexei nodded. "The two quiet ones. They're not soldiers. They're advisors. Accountants, maybe." Something like pride flickered in his eyes. His hand came up, traced along my jaw. "That's why you're dangerous, Elena. You see things, understand patterns. Is that what I am to you?" The word came out harsh. Before I could ask what he meant, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, face illuminating in the screen's glow. His expression went dark. He showed me the screen. A photo. My apartment building in Bushwick. Police tape across the door. Shattered windows. My knees went weak. He was already moving, pulling me back toward the main street. "They hit your apartment. My things are gone." His voice was clipped, controlled, but underneath, I heard fury. "This is retaliation, for tonight." Dmitri pulled up seconds later, the SUV's door already open. Alexei pushed me inside, climbed in after, barked orders in Russian too fast for me to follow. "They could have hurt someone," I said numbly. "My neighbors." No one was hurt. He pulled out his gun, checked the chamber with practiced efficiency. "The point is, they know where you lived, know your routine." Fear crystallized into anger. He looked at me then, and his eyes were ice. "But first, I get you somewhere truly safe. My house, not an apartment." His jaw clenched. "My actual home." The word family hung between us. He leaned forward to Dmitri. "Call everyone. Full security detail." Dmitri nodded and started making calls. I stared at Alexei. He holstered his gun. "But not you." The certainty in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, I felt something else entirely, a dark, dangerous warmth spreading through my chest. I whispered. He was quiet for a long moment. The city rushed by outside, lights and shadows and life continuing while mine spun apart. "Because when you stood up in that gallery," he said finally, "when you looked at me like I was just a man and not a monster, something shifted." His hand found mine in the darkness. "You make me want to be the man my sister thought I could be," he continued, voice barely audible. My throat tightened. His fingers tightened around mine. "Don't tell me it's not real. Don't tell me it's just protection. Because after tonight, after seeing you hold your own in a room full of wolves..." He stopped, swallowed hard. The confession hung between us like a live wire. Outside, the city gleamed. Inside the car, something fragile and dangerous had just been born. His house was a fortress disguised as elegance. 3 stories of limestone and iron in Brooklyn Heights. High walls, security cameras at every angle, guards positioned at intervals like chess pieces. But inside, it was unexpectedly warm. Hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves, art on every wall, not just investments, but pieces chosen with care. A piano in the corner, photographs on the mantel that I couldn't see clearly in the dim light. "Upstairs," Alexei said, guiding me past 3 armed men who nodded respectfully. We climbed a staircase with an ornate banister. The second floor was quieter, more personal. I could smell cedar and old books. He opened a door to a room that was nothing like the sterile Williamsburg apartment. This had character. A 4-poster bed with navy linens, A reading chair by the window, paintings I recognized as Russian landscapes from the 1800s. There's clothes in the closet. He stayed in the doorway. Bathroom through there. I turned to face him. He met my eyes. This isn't. We can't. I struggled for words. This started as protection. He was quiet for a long moment. In the soft light, he looked younger, more human. The controlled mask had slipped, showing something raw underneath. I don't know, he admitted. But I know that when Dmitri sent me that photo of your apartment, my first thought wasn't strategy or retaliation. His voice dropped. Terror that they'd gotten to you, that I'd failed, that I'd lose someone else He stopped, closed his eyes. I whispered. The words sounded torn from him. I care about you, Elena, more than I should. My heart hammered against my ribs. I took a step toward him. I'm terrified of this, of what it means, of how much I couldn't finish. Couldn't admit out loud what my body had been screaming for days. Alexei crossed the room in 2 strides. His hands cupped my face, tilting my head up. My name was a command and a plea. The confession tumbled out. I want you, and I hate myself for it because you're dangerous and violent and you've killed people, and I should run as far as I can, but He kissed me. Not soft like before. This was desperate, consuming. His mouth claimed mine with weeks of restrained hunger finally unleashed. I gasped against his lips and he deepened the kiss, one hand tangling in my hair, the other spanning my lower back, pulling me flush against him. I'd been kissed before. This wasn't that. This was falling and burning and drowning all at once. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. This is a mistake, he said roughly. You should leave. Go back to your normal life. My hands fisted in his shirt. The Kozlovs won't stop. They'll keep coming, keep threatening. I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. You said it yourself. His jaw clenched. I traced the line of his jaw, felt him shudder. And I'm still here. A warning, a prayer. Show me, I whispered. Show me who you are when you're not being the wolf of Brighton Beach. Something cracked in his expression. He took my hand, led me across the hall to his room. It was darker than mine, masculine. A king bed with black sheets, more bookshelves, a desk covered in papers. But what caught my attention was the wall opposite the bed, covered floor to ceiling with photographs. I approached slowly. A young girl with Alexei's eyes, holding paintbrushes. The same girl older, laughing in front of a canvas. Alexei younger, arm around his sister's shoulders. A woman who must have been their mother. A stern man with silver hair. The father. This is them, I breathed. He stood behind me, close, but not touching. He pointed to a photograph. Moscow 2010. She was painting in Gorky Park when 2 rival factions started shooting. His voice was flat, emotionless, but I heard the wound beneath. My father spiraled after, became reckless, made enemies he couldn't handle. He paused. My mother died of a broken heart 6 months after that. I turned to face him. His eyes were haunted. 23 years old and suddenly responsible for 300 people. Soldiers, families, debts, wars. I didn't want it. I reached up, touched his face. He caught my hand, pressed his lips to my palm. I'm too far gone. Too much blood. I stepped closer. Not a ghost, not a memory. Something present. His control finally shattered. He pulled me against him, kissed me like I was oxygen, and he'd been drowning. We stumbled backward toward the bed, his hands exploring, mine pulling at his shirt. The silk dress pooled at my feet. His jacket followed. He stopped, breathing hard, hands trembling on my waist. You'll be mine, truly mine, not for show. I know, I repeated. I'm choosing this. Something fierce and possessive flared in his eyes. His voice dropped to gravel. I don't share. I don't let go. Promise me something first, I whispered. Don't treat me like I'm fragile. I met his eyes. I want all of you. His laugh was low, dark. Then he kissed me again, and we fell into the darkness together. I woke to gunfire. Not close, distant, muffled by walls and distance, but unmistakable. Alexei was already moving, pulling on pants, grabbing his gun from the nightstand. The predator had returned, all traces of the vulnerable man from last night erased. Boys, noise. He checked the chamber. His voice was ice. He was gone before I could respond, the door clicking shut behind him. I sat in his bed, sheets tangled around me, my body still warm from his touch hours ago. Outside, the sky was turning gray with early dawn. More gunfire, shouting in Russian. I should have stayed put. Should have locked the door like he said. Instead, I grabbed one of his shirts from the floor, pulled it on, and crept to the window. The street below was chaos. 3 cars blocked the entrance to the property, men in tactical gear, not Alexei's, wrong colors, taking positions behind vehicles. Alexei's guards returning fire from the walls, from windows, coordinated and deadly. A war zone in Brooklyn Heights. My phone, the one Alexei gave me, buzzed on the nightstand. Dmitri, stay away from windows. We have this contained. I typed back, where's Alexei? Dmitri. Handling it. Stay put. But through the window I saw him. On the ground floor, visible through the gate, moving with lethal precision, firing, directing his men, a commander in his element. Then I saw the figure behind him. No, I breathed. The man emerged from the shadows between houses, one of the Kozlov soldiers, flanking while Alexei's attention was forward. Gun raised, aimed at Alexei's back. I didn't think, didn't hesitate. I grabbed the nearest heavy object, a marble bookend from Alexei's shelf, and threw it through the window. Glass exploded outward. The crash made everyone look up, including Alexei, who spun just as the Kozlov soldier fired. The bullet that would have hit his spine caught his shoulder instead. Alexei went down, but already shooting. The Kozlov soldier fell, didn't get up. Dmitri was there in seconds, dragging Alexei behind cover, while others suppressed fire from the remaining attackers. My hands shook. Blood roared in my ears. I'd saved him, or gotten him shot. I couldn't tell which. The door burst open, Pavel breathing hard. You need to come with me. Alexei is alive because of you. He pulled me downstairs, through hallways I didn't recognize, into a basement safe room with reinforced walls and monitors showing every angle of the property. On screen, I watched Alexei's men push back the Kozlov forces, watched the attackers retreat to their vehicles, watched them speed away, leaving 2 bodies behind. The entire assault lasted less than 10 minutes. It felt like hours. They brought him to the safe room 20 minutes later. Blood soaked his left shoulder, but he was walking, conscious, already barking orders in Russian. When he saw me, something flashed across his face. Relief, anger, something too complex to name. You broke my fucking window, he said. Despite everything, he almost smiled, then winced as Dmitri began cutting away his shirt. It's through and through, Dmitri assessed. Clean. Alexei's eyes never left mine. I crossed to him on shaking legs. He caught my hand with his good one. That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever seen, he said quietly. So could you. He pulled me closer despite Dmitri's protests about needing space to work. His thumb traced circles on my wrist. The Kozlovs know where I live now, know my security. He studied my face. Elena, after this, after seeing what this life actually is, you could leave. I'd protect you from a distance. The word came out firm. Certain. You watched men try to kill me. I know what you are, Alexei. I squeezed his hand. Last night wasn't a mistake. Dmitri started stitching. Alexei didn't flinch, but his hand tightened on mine. The Kozlovs crossed a line, he said, attacking my home, risking civilian casualties in a residential neighborhood. Simple, certain, real war, not posturing or territory disputes. His smile was sharp as winter. I already am. They came to kill me and failed. Lost 2 men in the process. He looked at Dmitri. Call everyone. Full assembly tonight. Dmitri nodded and stepped away to make calls. Alexei turned back to me. You'll have to stay hidden. Protected. He pulled me down, kissed me hard despite Dmitri's muttered complaints about patient cooperation. When we broke apart, his eyes were molten silver. When this is over, he said against my lips, when the Kozlovs are gone and you're truly safe, I'm going to ask you properly. No threats, no protection arrangements. To stay, not because you have to. My heart stuttered. His hand cupped my face. Mine. I'm already yours, I whispered. His voice roughened. When the danger is gone and you can walk away freely. I kissed him softly. Win, I said. Survive this. His laugh was low, dangerous, full of dark promise. Then watch me, Mishka. 3 weeks later. The gallery opening was everything Vincent Castellanos never was. Legitimate, legal, beautiful. I stood in front of a Kandinsky original, champagne in hand, watching art collectors and critics mill through the space. The same gallery where this all started. Now under new management. Clean management. Alexei's war with the Kozlovs had lasted 12 days. Brutal, decisive, final. Mikhail Kozlov was dead. His nephew had fled to Moscow. The territories were redistributed. The other families had declared Alexei's victory just and recognized his expanded control. The wolf had won. Now he stood across the gallery in a tailored suit, discussing something with a curator, looking every inch the legitimate art patron he was pretending to be. Our eyes met across the room. He excused himself, crossed to me with that predatory grace. So, he said quietly, no more danger. No more protection arrangements. His hand found mine. Your apartment is repaired. Your family is safe. I set down my champagne, turned to face him fully. Ask me, I said. His voice was low, intimate, completely serious. Will you stay? Not because I'm protecting you, not because you're afraid, but because you choose this. Yes, I said without hesitation. I choose you. Something fierce and possessive blazed in his eyes. I stepped closer. It means I'm yours. He kissed me there in the gallery, in front of critics and collectors and his carefully disguised guards. When we broke apart, he pressed something into my hand. A key. I asked. The house in Brooklyn Heights. His thumb traced my lower lip. I looked at the key, then at him, this dangerous, complicated, surprisingly gentle man who'd turned my world inside out. Home, I repeated, testing the word. It fit perfectly,